Hey everyone, CData from Subconscious here. I wanted to give you a quick demo of some of the stuff we've been doing to sort of build out a command line interface for experimenting with the Noosphere. So I'm going to do a quick demo showing how you can use the CLI, the orb CLI, to initialize a sphere, set up a gateway, and synchronize a replica of your sphere content across multiple devices. So what I've got here on the left side is a terminal open on my local desktop. On the right side, I have a terminal open on my laptop, which is right over here. I'm going to quickly unlock that. And down on the bottom, I have a terminal open in a little cloud instance that I have running that I'm going to use to set up the gateway. So let's first start on my local machine. The very first thing you need to do when you start using the orb CLI is to create a key for yourself. The orb CLI has a little key management facility to help you with this, and we can create a key and assign it to a pet name. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Orb key create CData. Okay, so now I've got a key. CLI has told me where it is, and it's given me this thing called a DID, which is the identity of my key. The next thing I'm going to do is create a folder for my sphere. So I'm going to go ahead and make a directory. And inside of there, I'm going to initialize a new sphere with the CLI. Sorry, I'm getting tons of notification spam. I'm going to go ahead and initialize the sphere using the orb CLI, orb sphere create. And then I'm going to assign the key that owns it to the key I just created. So you can see here it's telling me that I created a sphere. The sphere has its own identity, and you also get a secret phrase that you can use if you ever need to change the owner key, in case your key gets compromised or you just need to rotate it or whatever. If you're doing this, don't live stream it, because anybody who has this phrase could theoretically take ownership over your sphere. All right, so I've created a sphere here, and if I look at the hidden files in this directory, you can actually see there's a .sphere directory. This contains all of the sphere content, and if you're familiar with Git, it's very similar to the .git folder in terms of its role. But a sphere with just a .sphere folder in here, that's not very interesting, so let's go ahead and create some content. I'm going to say hello with a subtext file. All right, so here's my first piece of content, and in order to see what the status of my sphere is, I can type orb status. You can see it noticed that I have a new file in here, and if I type orb save, it will actually save the updated file to my sphere. And it even tells me what the latest revision of my sphere's ID is. So that's cool. It doesn't really do much for us though, because we're just saving content to a sphere here in the local device. So let's go ahead and get a gateway set up so that we can sync back and forth between the gateway and the sphere. I'm going to move over to my cloud instance here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is the first thing I did on my local machine. I'm going to create a key. Orb key create gateway. Okay, so now my gateway has a key. And then my gateway is also going to create a sphere for itself. So I'm going to make a folder for that. And I'm going to initialize a sphere here in the gateway. So you can see this is the exact same process that we did on the local machine. And the reason why we do that is because the gateway actually uses a sphere to manage its own internal state. So it needs its own key and it needs its own sphere. And once we've done that, we need to do one more thing. We need to take the identity of our sphere here on our local machine, and we need to tell the gateway that that's the sphere that it's sort of paired with, that it cares about receiving updates for. And so we'll tell the gateway cares about this sphere by saying orb config set counterpart and then that ID. So now the gateway has all the information it needs to know to interact with our client. We'll go ahead and tell the gateway to start up. I'm going to tell it to bind to all interfaces on this machine because I'm too lazy to look up the IP address. And you can see that now I've got a gateway running bound on this port and this IP. So the next thing I need to do is go back to my client and tell my client where my gateway is. I'll do that similarly to how I configured the counterpart, orb config set gateway URL. And I'm going to say it's, let's see. Oh, actually, I need to find out the IP after all. Let me quickly do that. All right, so here's the IP for my gateway. Let's go back. So I know that the gateway is running on that IP with that port. And once I've done that, I can type orb sync. And you can see that we've done some steps here. The orb is the CLI is telling us that it's synced from the gateway, and then it has pushed its local changes to the gateway. And over here on the gateway, you can see a bunch of server logs that sort of tell us what kinds of API actions were being performed by the remote client. Very cool, but still not very interesting because this is just data going back and forth between the gateway and the client. What would make this really interesting is if we synchronize the content between my desktop over here and my laptop over here. I'm just gonna make sure I can still, yes, my laptop is still awake. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a folder. I'm gonna call it My Sphere Replica. And I'm gonna make sure I have a key here for my client. Now, this is very important in the sort of domain of ideas of Noosphere. We want every single client to have its own key, because instead of some systems where you might create one key for yourself and then like share that key around, we use a process of authorization where one key can delegate capabilities to another key. And this is very convenient because it allows you to sort of say, well, maybe I lost my phone and I want to revoke the authorization I gave it. I don't have to completely change my entire key infrastructure just to revoke authorization to the other key. So I'm creating a distinct key for my laptop. I'm calling it other CData. And then I'm going to use a helpful orb command to join my sphere. So I'm going to go back and get my sphere's ID again up here. And I'm going to say orb sphere join and put the ID there. And I'm going to say the local key I want to use here is other CData. And the command line interface will then prompt you and say, well, on the first client that you're going to use to create the authorization, run this command. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this command. And back here on my desktop, I'm going to run the command. And it's going to tell me, okay, we've created an authorization for that key. It's very important now that you sync, because otherwise the gateway is not going to know about the authorization. So I'm going to do that. And then I can use this code back on my laptop to authorize, or to save the authorization here. So now that I've done that, I need to also get the gateway URL and set that up. So I'm just going to copy it from the first client where I set it up here. And orb sync. And Bob's your uncle. There's hello.subtext. I can see the contents of it. It looks like the content's right. And let's go the extra mile now and start writing some content here on the replica. So I'm going to say, I'm going to make a subdirectory here. It's like laptop notes. And I'm going to go ahead and say vim foobar dot subtext. Hello, this is a note that I am taking on my laptop. I can say orb status. Oh, let's do orb status. It's able to pick up that item, and then orb save. Adds it to the sphere, and then orb sync. There it goes to the gateway. And back on my desktop, orb sync. And there we go. And this is Noosphere. Well, it's the very beginning of it. It's still got a lot of bugs and rough edges, but if you are excited about exploring this space with us, I encourage you to try it out. Please don't use it for anything super sensitive. Make sure you make lots of backups, and I'll look forward to hearing from all y'all about what it's like for you. All right, thank you.